Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Right before you is the second GTX 580 Lightning. This is the one with the good core, the not so good memory, and also the mounting pressure problems, which is why there's still the IHS on there, because if I remove it, the card will not run. So yeah, that's why the IHS is there. And as you can clearly see, the VRM of this card had some changes to it. 2 phases are now gone. This is now a 10-phase VRM rather than a 12-phase. So yeah, let's just go into what happened. So yesterday I decided I want to run the card a bit. And yeah, so I got the Accelerometer heatsink because I didn't feel like putting water on it. I just wanted to test it a bit. And then I noticed like the card is really unreliable. So it was randomly crashing, it was on boot up not getting detected a lot of times, and the VRM was getting really hot, which I always remembered the VRM on this card, like the heatsink is not substantial, it's literally just a steel plate, but the VRM of this thing I always remembered as running kinda cool. And now it was getting really hot. I didn't really think much of it. I thought, well, I mean, it's an MSI card. It has this mounting pressure thing, so I guessed, yeah, that's probably why it has detection issues. Like MSI cards, specifically MSI GTX 580s, have like some weird thing with my test bench where they just don't get detected sometimes. And then this one also has the mounting pressure thing, so I was just like, yeah. That's probably the cause of all the instability and unreliable things, so I didn't really think much of it. But then I saw a sign of actual trouble. So on the back, the GTX 580 Lightning has these LEDs, and they indicate the whether VCore phases are turned on and off. Like it has 12 LEDs for all the 12 VCore phases, and when they're running, they are either green or red, like the upper 6 are green, the lower 6 are red. There's like an active phase positioning tool that you can download from MSI to turn the red phases off and idle. So yeah. And so I saw that the LED of phase number 2 was no longer running. All the other ones were on, but LED number 2 was no longer on, it was off. And then I was like, okay. So the VRM is getting hotter than I remembered, and phase number 2 is shown as no longer running. So then I tested, is a certain region of the VRM getting hotter than the rest? Yes, phase number 2 was getting hotter than the other phases. So then I was like, oh shit, I have a MOSFET that's about to die in phase number 2. So I tore the card down, and I started, like the card was still running, it was like running benchmarks, it just was kind of unreliable. So I wasn't really expecting that there would be a dead short, but I tested anyway, and then I got some really, like I got results that I have no idea how these results can be real, but I retested several times, and I got the same result. I have no idea how this can work, but yeah, so there were 1.2 ohms from 12 volts to ground on this 8-pin, which feeds these phases. So there's several ways how you can have a, like that's very obviously a pretty much dead short on 12 volts to ground. And if it's not completely 0 ohms, it usually indicates you have your 12 volts shorted to VCore, because then you're measuring the resistance from 12 volts to the core, through the core to ground, and 1.2 ohms, it's kinda higher than what this core has, but it's around where you would expect the 580 to have its core resistance. So what I was measuring was, 12 volts is shorted to VCore. The high-side MOSFET of phase 2 is not just slightly dead, it's completely dead. There is a dead short from 12 volts to VCore. The thing I can't explain is, why isn't the card dead? Why is the card putting out an image? Why is it installing drivers? Why is it running benchmarks? If there's 12 volts going into the core. I have no idea how this can work. My only theory is that the MOSFET is only slightly, like it's slightly dead. So that when the PWM controller is sending a signal, it kinda still turns on and off. Only in a off state where I measured the resistances, it kind of looks like a short. That's probably why there were 1.2 volts, because this core has like 500 milliohms of resistance, and I measured 1.2 ohms here, so I guess the extra resistance was just the MOSFET not being completely shorted yet, but pretty much being completely shorted. So I guess when the card is turned on, the MOSFET still turned on and off and still kinda worked, but because it was partially / mostly shorted, it was getting really, really hot. So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna remove it. 11 phases is still plenty. So remove the high side, check the resistances checked out, short was gone. And I was like, okay, let's test the card again. So I tested the card again, still worked. Like, I mean, it did before with the dead MOSFET on it, so why wouldn't it now? But there was still the issue that the VRM was still getting very, very hot. So I was like, damn. Yeah, so there's probably another dying or dead MOSFET in there. More like dying, because like the card was still running. So what I did is just like I tore the card down, I placed it on this desk, and I just turned it on and just like felt with my finger which MOSFET was getting really hot. I found it pretty quickly. It was the low side of phase number 3. So that's why that phase is also gone now. So I removed that low side, including the other I just removed all the MOSFETs in that phase. So now we're down to 10 phases. And now the VRM is no longer overheating. Like, it's no longer getting really, really hot in that area. Card still runs fine. And yeah, so I guess it's working now again. But the fact that I had 2 dying MOSFETs on this, yeah, like, if you have 2 dead MOSFETs, specifically, like one is a high side, one was a low side, yeah, there's a good chance that other MOSFETs on this card are also about to die, which is not, I mean, that's just not great. Losing this VRM is, yeah, that's not a great thing, that's a pretty bad thing. Because I always thought, if one day the card dies, I can at least turn the VRM into a very capable E-power, but now the VRM is also dying. So I'm just like, yeah. I have another Lightning. This one has my best GTX 580 core on it, but the memory is not that great. So I guess, yeah, well. Now where the card is like slowly falling apart, and it's not my only Lightning, I'm just like, well, I can just bench it to death now. Kinda. I mean, this will probably be completely fine with 10 phases out of 12. Though, if I take it like under 0 degrees, it might have problems when it starts to pull like a lot of current. As of now, the highest voltage I can set this to is 1.23 volts at the VRM, so that's not really a lot. That's actually under the reference VRM safety limit. So yeah, this is gonna be fine. It's just not ideal, because now where you have 10 phases instead of 12, each phase has now, I think, like 17% more current going through it. So like that's the problem when you have to amputate phases from a card. I have no replacement MOSFETs. If I had, guess I could replace them. But I don't, like, these are IR direct FETs. These are a pain to desolder. I actually had to use a heat gun because my hot air station is just not powerful enough for these, because like this exposed metal part, that's actually part of where they transfer their power. And this is a big PCB with a big heavy power plane, like my hot air station is just not good enough for that. And the heat gun is a very brute force method of getting these MOSFETs off there. I actually destroyed 2 of the MOSFETs in the process, so yeah, that's why I'm not bothering with repairing the 2 phases. I'm just gonna run it with 10 and hope it will be fine. So yeah. Well, I mean, the card works, and like 10 phases, that's still enough, I would say. I don't think it will break any world records now. even if it was able to do it before. But yeah. So I just hope that no more MOSFETs on this are gonna die. And yeah. So hopefully the card will work now. Because like 10 phases is like the limit I would go to. Because like, well, the GTX 580 Direct CO2, which I like a lot, I actually like that one more than this card. That has 8 phases, but the thing is the Direct CO2 has much more powerful phases than this one. So if this would drop down to 8 phases, this would potentially be a pretty big problem. Which is why like 10 phases is the, like, yeah, I would go lower than this. 2 phases missing, that's kinda a lot. Like a 1 phase I wouldn't be concerned about. 2 phases, yeah, like if it was 3 phases, I would be kinda concerned running the card. With 2 phases I'm still gonna run it, I'm just gonna be hoping that it won't cause problems. So yeah, guess the VRM issue is fixed. And by the way, if you're wondering why the capacitors are black and the chokes are painted black, I just paint cards when I'm bored. That's what I do. So yeah, I mean the 2 phases are marked because those are the dead ones. The capacitors are just painted because I guess it looks nice. Whatever. So yeah, the card is slowly falling apart, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna be any less abusive with it, because, well, it's not my only Lightning. I have another Lightning that is working fine, even though the core on it is not that great. It does have really good memory though. So yeah. I just hope that no more things are going to blow up here. And yeah, so that's kind of the end of the video, I guess. I think I've been repeating myself for the last 5 minutes or so. So yeah, card blew up slightly, more or less. 2 phases are missing now, like, well, I mean, it's sort of the best case that could have happened. I mean, the absolute best case would be just repairing the phases, but as I've said, I'm not gonna bother with that. Like, this is far away from worst case. Worst case would have been, like, the MOSFET properly blowing up and, like, damaging the core or, like, blowing a hole into the PCB in the process. This was just me being like, oh, it's getting kinda hot, I guess I'll remove it. And now the problem is, from what I can tell, gone. So yeah. I don't know if I'm gonna wash the card again, because, like, there's just a lot of flux residue everywhere and it looks kinda disgusting. Even here. It just doesn't look great. So yeah. It doesn't really impact the functionality of it. Though I've heard that sometimes, like, debris and flux residue that's getting, like, under the memory chips or stuff, that can actually cause the card to be unstable, but yeah, well, maybe I'll wash it. I don't know, I'm not planning on it right now. So yeah, I guess at the end, because the video hasn't reached 20 minutes yet, I guess I can say why I wanted to run the card some more. Because the Lightning has built-in software control for the PAX rail. And I've recently learned that on Fermi, undervolting the PAX rail can actually help you get more core clocks. So, and that's not general undervolting. I still think undervolting is dumb, but like PAX rail, like the PAX rail doesn't really, like, it's a supporting voltage that the card needs to run. It's pretty much completely uninteresting after that. Like, sometimes overvolting it under LN2 can help with code bugs, and now I've learned that undervolting it on Fermi cards can apparently help you get higher core clocks. And since this is my best core, I was trying to like see what happens. So yeah, that's what I wanted to investigate. Guess I'm still gonna do that. Maybe with some more cards as well. Because getting like, I still have to reach 1.1 gigahertz on a 580. I think I've done it on my 560 Ti 448 with like ridiculously high voltage. But on a 580, I think the highest I've gotten was on this card with like 1070. No, actually the highest I've gotten was 1080 on the direct CO2 when I ran it with. I haven't made a video about that. Like before I ran this card, I ran the direct CO2 with ice water, and well, just like look for my HW bot profile. The benches are there. Like put some decent scores with the direct CO2 on ice water, and that one ran 1080 core with no undervolting on the PAX rail. Like I wasn't aware of that back then. So yeah, but like the highest non-chilled water I got was with this, which was like 1075, 1076. So if the undervolting on the PAX rail works really well, I guess this is gonna do 1100 core at like, well, maybe it's gonna need water cooling for that, but it's not gonna need like chilled water. Well, again, it wasn't really chilled. Like chilled water for me is under 0 degrees, or like pretty much close to it. What I ran was like 20 degrees under load. So yeah. I guess the video is long enough by now. So thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time, goodbye.